the whispers of the void, carried far in space. They traveled past the iridescent nebulae, through the hollow spaces between solar systems, and into the listening devices of 1,000 species. Tonight, those whispers spoke of fear. "The humans have been silent for too long," said one voice in the great council chamber of the Varkal Dominion. "A predator is most dangerous when it makes no sound." Admiral Shirtok, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights of the council chamber, dismissed the concern with a flick of his secondary appendage. "Humans? They are border dwellers, insignificant. 3 centuries of galactic colonization. And what territory do they hold? A mere 7 systems." The chamber, filled with representatives of the 17 ruling species of the Dominion, rumbled with agreement. Only Councillor Mavis, ancient and wise even by the standards of the long-lived Aurelians, remained silent, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display of Earth. "They have refused our integration protocols 17 times, Shirtok continued, his voice rising with practiced authority. "They isolate themselves from proper galactic society. They engage in minimal trade. They contribute nothing to our collective defense. And yet, they demand the rights of full members." He paused, letting his mandibles click together in what his species considered a dismissive laugh. "It is time we addressed the human question, once and for all." In the shadowed corner of the chamber, Mavis finally spoke. Her voice, though quiet, carried a strange weight that silenced even the most vocal supporters of Shirtok. "Be careful," she said simply. "Those who appear weakest often carry secrets that could burn worlds." Admiral Shirtok's secondary eyes narrowed. "Are you defending these primates, Counselor? Perhaps your long memory has finally failed you." "My memory serves me well enough to remember what happened to the last civilization that underestimated a quiet species." Mavis rose from her seat, her ancient frame surprisingly straight. "But you would not remember the Kolnar, would you, Admiral? They are not even mentioned in your histories anymore." Shirtok dismissed her warning with another click of his mandibles. "The Council will vote now. The human problem requires resolution. We will send them our terms for surrender and reorganization into the Dominion's direct control." The votes were tallied. The decision was made. The ultimatum was sent. Across the galaxy, all eyes turned toward Earth. Colonel Lynn O'Shea hadn't set foot on Earth in 15 years. After the Io massacre, where Shirtok had left 20,000 human colonists to die in Jupiter's radiation belts, he'd withdrawn to Proxima Centauri b. There, in the cold twilight of a planet orbiting a red dwarf, he'd built a small home overlooking an iron Red Sea. The call came on a Tuesday. "Colonel," said the voice over the quantum relay, "the Human Council requests your return to active duty." Lynn stared at the holographic interface, his weathered face impassive. He was 53 now, his once black hair streaked with silver, his eyes bearing the neural enhancement rings that marked veterans of the shadow conflicts. "I'm retired," he said simply. "This is not a request that allows for refusal," replied General Harkins, her own face grave on the projection. "The Varkal have issued an ultimatum, full surrender within 72 Earth hours, or they will begin what they call species realignment." Lynn's expression didn't change, but his hand, resting on the arm of his chair, tightened imperceptibly. "And what does the Council plan to do?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We're deploying the Starforged." The words hung in the air between them. The Starforged dreadnought, humanity's most closely guarded secret. A weapon so terrible that its very existence had been compartmentalized to the point that fewer than 50 humans knew of it. Lynn had helped design it. After Io, after watching Shirtok's ships methodically destroy the colony's life support systems, he had poured his grief and rage into the project. "The neural interface was calibrated for you," Harkins continued when Lin remained silent. No one else can pilot it at full capacity. You mean no one else can bear the psychological load, Lin corrected her. Do you know what it's like to have your mind merged with something that was born in a dying star? Something that doesn't think like us, doesn't feel like us. You survived it before. Barely. Lin stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the crimson sea. And I was younger then, angrier. Are you telling me you're not angry anymore, Lin? Harkin's voice softened. After what he did at Io, Lin pressed his forehead against the cool glass. What I feel doesn't matter. What matters is whether I can control it once I'm linked to the Starforged. If I lose control, you won't. You can't know that. We're sending Vanya to help you. That made him turn. Dr. Liu, she's still active. She's the best neural interface psychologist we have, and she knows you. Lin closed his eyes briefly. Vanya Liu had been there after the initial test run of the neural interface. She'd been the one to pull him back from the brink when the alien consciousness of the Starforged had nearly overwhelmed his own. When? He asked finally. Transport arrives in 6 hours. The Varkol are broadcasting their approach across all galactic channels. They're making a spectacle of this. Lin. They want everyone to see Earth fall. Lin's lip curled slightly. Then, I suppose we should give them a show. The journey back to Earth took 3 days, even with the quantum jump drive of the military transport. Lin spent most of that time in meditation, preparing his mind for what was to come. Dr. Vanya Liu joined him on the 2nd day, boarding at the Mars transfer station. You look well, she said by way of greeting, her keen eyes assessing him. At 62, she remained striking, her posture perfect, her black hair now accented with a streak of electric blue, a fashion choice that somehow suited her precise demeanor. You look like you're still terrorizing your students, he replied, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Someone has to maintain standards. She sat across from him, in the transport's small meditation chamber. They told me you've been in isolation. I've had company. Your nightmares don't count as company, Colonel. Lin's almost smile faded. I've managed them. Have you? Or have you just built walls high enough that you don't have to look at them? She leaned forward. The Starforged will tear those walls down. You know that. I do. And yet you agreed to return. Lin looked at her directly for the first time. They're threatening Earth. Earth has defense systems, conventional fleets. Not enough against what the Varkol are sending. We've intercepted their communications. They're deploying their full Southern Arm fleet. 37 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. Dr. Liu's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. That's excessive for a minor species like us. They're making an example. They want to show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse to join their dominion. And we're going to show them something else entirely. It wasn't a question. Lin nodded once. But I need your help to do it. To maintain control when I link with the Starforged. Tell me about your current mental state. Clinically? However you want to describe it. Lin was silent for a long moment. I thought I'd found peace on Proxima B. The anger. It was still there, but distant, like a storm on the horizon that never comes closer. But now, he flexed his fingers unconsciously. Now I can feel it again, right under my skin. That's natural. Is it? To want revenge so badly that, even after 15 years, it feels like yesterday? Dr. Liu studied him. The desire for justice isn't pathological. Lin, the EO massacre. Don't. His voice was suddenly sharp. Don't call it that. A massacre implies chaos, frenzy. What Zyrtok did was methodical, calculated. He disabled the colony's shields during a solar storm. then broadcast their distress calls across every frequency while refusing to allow rescue ships to approach. He wanted us to hear them die, one by one, as the radiation poisoning took hold. His hands had clenched into fists. He forced them to relax. "I don't want revenge," he said finally. "I want justice. I want him to understand what he did." Dr. Liu's expression softened slightly. "That distinction may be the difference between controlling the Starforged and being consumed by it." "I know." Lin closed his eyes. "Help me hold on to it." The Earth's outer solar system was eerily quiet as their transport approached. Normally, the transit lanes between the asteroid belt and Neptune would be bustling with mining ships and interstellar traders. Now, there was nothing but the occasional flash of military patrol vessels. From the viewport of the transport, Lin could see Jupiter's massive form. His eyes automatically drifted to Io, its yellow-orange surface a perpetual reminder of human loss. Io had been resettled after the massacre, but everyone knew it was now more memorial than colony. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," announced the transport's captain over the intercom. "The Varkol fleet has entered the heliopause. They'll reach Neptune's orbit in approximately 6 hours. Lin exchanged a glance with Dr. Liu. It was time. They transferred to a smaller, faster vessel at the Mars defensive perimeter. This one bore no markings. Its hull, a strange, light-absorbing black that seemed to create a visual distortion around it. "Dark light tech," Dr. Liu murmured, running her hand just above the surface of the ship's interior wall. "I've only read about this. Reverse-engineered from the same stellar material as the Starforged," Lin confirmed. "It doesn't reflect or absorb light. It redirects it around itself, making it effectively invisible to optical sensors and most other detection methods." The pilot's voice interrupted their conversation. "We'll reach the forge in 20 minutes. Colonel, you might want to prepare yourselves." Lin felt a tightening in his chest. The forge, humanity's greatest secret, hidden in plain sight at the edge of the solar system. "Where is it?" Dr. Liu asked, peering out the viewport at the star-speckled blackness. "Pluto," Lin said quietly. "Or rather, inside Pluto." Her eyes widened slightly. "The entire dwarf planet is a shell, a containment structure built around the forge." Their small vessel approached the distant, unassuming dwarf planet. To casual observation, Pluto appeared unchanged from its natural state, a cold, distant world of ice and rock. But as they drew closer, a section of the surface seemed to shimmer and then part, revealing a massive hangar bay carved into the planet itself. "The Varkol don't know," Dr. Liu whispered. "All these years, they never realized." "We've maintained the illusion," Lin confirmed. "Automated research stations, falsified scientific data. The official record states that we abandoned Pluto research decades ago due to lack of valuable resources." Their ship slipped into the hangar bay, which sealed seamlessly behind them. Inside was a cavernous space, bustling with activity. Hundreds of technicians and engineers moved purposefully around equipment that appeared simultaneously ancient and impossibly advanced. But it was what hung suspended in the center of the chamber that drew every eye. The star-forged dreadnought. It was massive, at least 5 kilometers long, Lin estimated, though its true dimensions were difficult to gauge. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating the impression of a ship-shaped void in reality. Occasional pulses of energy, like veins of magma in black rock, moved across its surface in patterns that seemed almost biological. "My God," breathed Dr. Liu. "It's beautiful." "It's terrifying," Lin corrected her softly. "As it was designed to be." They disembarked, greeted by a delegation led by Admiral Chen Santiago, head of the Human Defense Council. "Colonel O'Shea," Santiago said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Lin shook it briefly. "I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." Santiago turned to Dr. Liu. "Doctor, your expertise will be crucial in the coming hours." "I understand," she replied. "When will the interface be ready?" "It's been ready for 15 years, Santiago said, his gaze returning to Lin. "Waiting for its pilot to return." Lin felt a chill run through him. "You've maintained the neural configuration? All this time?" "We've had no choice," Santiago admitted. "No one else has ever successfully interfaced with it at more than 20% capacity. You reached 87% in the initial tests." "And nearly lost my mind in the process," Lin reminded him. "We've improved the interface since then," Santiago assured him. "And you've had time to process the experience." They walked toward the dreadnought, passing through multiple security checkpoints. Around them, technicians were engaged in what appeared to be final preparations, their movements betraying a controlled urgency. "The Varkol fleet is broadcasting their approach on all frequencies," Santiago explained as they walked. "They're making a spectacle of this, showing the galaxy how they deal with rebellious species. Their transmissions have reached every corner of the Dominion." "Good," Lin said quietly. "Let them watch." They reached a lift that would take them into the dreadnought itself. Before entering, Santiago paused, fixing Lin with a serious gaze. "There's something you should know before you go aboard. The ship. It's changed since you last interfaced with it." Lin frowned. "Changed how?" "It's evolved. The core consciousness has developed in ways we didn't anticipate. It's more coherent now, more aware." "Are you saying it's alive?" Santiago hesitated. "We're saying it's something we don't fully understand, which is why we need you, someone it's connected with before." The lift doors closed behind them, cutting off further conversation. As they ascended into the body of the dreadnought, Lin felt a familiar sensation, a pressure at the edges of his mind, like standing in the ocean and feeling the first pull of an incoming tide. It remembered him. The neural interface chamber was located deep within the dreadnought, surrounded by layers of protection both physical and energetic. It was a spherical room, its walls lined with a material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. In the center floated a chair, or what approximated one, formed from the same fluid-like substance. Various instruments and monitors surrounded it, attended by a team of neural specialists who looked up as Lin, Dr. Liu, and Admiral Santiago entered. "Everything is prepared, Admiral," said the lead technician. "We've adjusted the interface parameters based on Colonel O'Shea's previous neural signature." Lin approached the chair warily. "How long will I have once I'm connected?" "The interface is designed to maintain optimal function for approximately 12 hours before neural fatigue becomes a concern," the technician explained. "But you can disconnect at any time if necessary." "And if I can't disconnect?" Lin asked quietly. The technician exchanged a glance with Dr. Liu, who stepped forward. "That's why I'm here," she said firmly. "I'll be monitoring your neural patterns continuously. At the first sign of entanglement beyond safe parameters, we can initiate an emergency disconnect." Lin nodded slowly. "And the dreadnought? What happens to it if I'm suddenly disconnected?" "It will revert to autonomous mode," Santiago answered. "Basic defensive capabilities only." "Which are substantial," added the technician. "But without a pilot, it can't utilize its full potential." Lin took a deep breath, then removed his jacket and began rolling up his sleeve. The neural interface required direct connection to the central nervous system. A small neural tap would be inserted at the base of his skull, with secondary connections along his spine. "The Varkol fleet has passed Neptune's orbit," announced one of the monitoring specialists. "Estimated time to Earth, 4 hours, 17 minutes. "We should begin," Dr. Liu said. her professional demeanor firmly in place. "Colonel, if you'll take your position." Lin settled into the floating chair, which immediately conformed to his body, securing him in place with gentle but unbreakable holds. The neural specialists moved around him, attaching monitors and preparing the interface connections. "Remember," Dr. Liu said, standing before him, "you are in control. The Starforged is a tool, not your master. Your consciousness is the dominant force in this relationship." Lin gave her a thin smile. "We both know that's not entirely true. Doctor." She held his gaze. "Make it true." The primary neural tap was inserted at the base of his skull, a momentary sharp pain, followed by a spreading coolness. Secondary connections followed along his spine, each one bringing a new sensation: pressure, tingling, a strange sense of expansion. "Neural interface initializing," announced one of the specialists. "Connection at 5%. 10%. 20%. Lin closed his eyes as the familiar pressure at the edges of his mind intensified. It was like standing at the threshold of an immense space, feeling the air pressure change as a massive door slowly opened before him. 40%. 50%. Images began flashing through his mind, stars being born and dying, the slow dance of galaxies, the patient violence of a black hole devouring matter. These were not his memories. They belonged to whatever consciousness resided in the heart of the Starforged. 65%. 70%. The pressure was becoming uncomfortable now, a sense of something vast pressing against the boundaries of his identity. Lin focused on his breathing, on the techniques Dr. Liu had taught him years ago: acceptance without surrender, observation without absorption. 80%. 85%. The boundary between Lin and the Starforged was thinning. He could feel its curiosity, its ancient patience, its terrible power, and underlying it all, a single question, repeated like a mantra. "Why did you leave us alone for so long?" 90% connection achieved, called the specialist, a note of awe in his voice. "Neural patterns stabilizing. Sync rate nominal." Lin opened his eyes, but what he saw was no longer limited to the physical space around him. He saw the dreadnought, not as an observer would see it from outside, but as an awareness distributed throughout its entire being. He saw the technicians around him, their bodies glowing with bioelectrical patterns. He saw through the hull of the ship, through the artificial planetoid that concealed it, out into the vacuum of space. And there, approaching from the outer system, he saw the Varkol fleet, a constellation of predatory shapes moving in perfect formation. "Connection complete," said a voice that seemed to come from very far away. "Colonel O'Shea, can you hear us?" Lin tried to respond, but found that speech felt strangely unnecessary. Instead, he thought the response, and the Dreadnought's communication system translated it into audible words. "I hear you," his disembodied voice said in the interface chamber. "And I can see them coming." Across the galaxy, billions of sentient beings watched their information feeds with growing tension. The Varkol Dominion had ensured maximum coverage of their pacification of Earth, positioning media ships alongside their war fleet, broadcasting continuous updates and commentary across all major communication networks. "The human leadership continues to ignore our reasonable demands," intoned a Varkol commentator, his mandibles clicking rhythmically in what his species recognized as authoritative speech. "Their silence only confirms their primitive nature and their unfitness for galactic society." The visual feed showed the impressive Varkol armada, sleek, predatory ships with gleaming hulls that reflected the distant sunlight. They moved with mathematical precision, their formation a display of military discipline meant to intimidate. "We are now receiving word that Admiral Zyrtok has issued a final warning," the commentator continued. Earth has one standard hour to transmit their surrender before corrective measures begin. In countless homes, gathering places, and public squares throughout the galaxy, members of various species watched with mixed emotions. The dominant races of the Varkol Dominion viewed the proceedings with satisfaction or indifference, another primitive species being brought to heel. The subjugated races watched with resignation, perhaps with hidden sympathy for the humans, but without hope for a different outcome. They had all seen this before. On the command deck of his flagship, the inevitable dominance. Admiral Shirtok stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, his primary eyes fixed on the main view screen that showed the blue-green planet growing steadily larger. Still no response from the humans, Admiral, reported his communications officer. As expected, Shirtok replied, his voice carrying the multi-tonal harmonics that indicated pleasure in his species. They know resistance is futile. Perhaps they are still debating which representatives to send for the surrender ceremony. A low, appreciative clicking sound rippled through the command deck, the Varkol equivalent of chuckling. Admiral, interrupted the sensor officer, her voice suddenly tense. We're detecting an energy signature at the edge of the system, near the dwarf planet. Zyrtok turned, his secondary eyes swiveling to focus on the officer. What kind of energy signature? Unknown, sir. It's not registering on any of our standard classifications. And it's massive. Show me. The main view screen shifted, zooming out to display the solar system in its entirety. A pulsing red dot appeared near Pluto's orbit. Magnify, Zyrtok ordered. The image zoomed in. But strangely, there was nothing visible at the coordinates of the energy reading. Just empty space. Sensor malfunction? Zyrtok suggested, a note of irritation entering his voice. No, sir. Multiple systems are confirming the reading. There's definitely something there. But our optical sensors can't see it. Switch to gravitational mapping. The screen changed again, showing a gravitational field visualization. There, unmistakable in the center of the display, was the outline of something enormous, a vessel far larger than anything in the Varkol fleet. Impossible, Zyrtok breathed, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. The humans don't have this technology. Our intelligence would have detected it. Sir, the communications officer broke in. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. For a moment, Zyrtok seemed almost relieved. They're surrendering, then put it through. But instead of a diplomatic message, the screen filled with the image of a human female in a military uniform. Admiral Chen Santiago's expression was calm, almost serene. Admiral Shirtok, she said, her voice level. On behalf of the Human Defense Council, I acknowledge receipt of your ultimatum. Shirtok's mandibles stilled. And you accept our terms? No. Santiago's expression didn't change. We reject them entirely. The sovereign systems of humanity will never submit to Varkol authority. Anger flashed through Zyrtok. Then you have chosen extinction. Your species. We haven't finished, Santiago interrupted. Something that was simply not done when addressing a Varkol admiral. You came to our home with threats, Admiral. You brought a fleet to intimidate us. You broadcast your intentions to the galaxy, expecting to make an example of us. Her eyes hardened slightly. So we will make an example of you instead. Before Shirtok could respond, Santiago glanced off screen and nodded once. Release the Starforged. The transmission cut off abruptly. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice was now edged with alarm. The object is moving. It's accelerating toward our position at an impossible rate. Battle stations, Zyrtok barked. All ships. Defensive formation Talon 7. Charge weapons and prepare for... His orders died in his throat as the view screen suddenly showed what had been invisible moments before. It emerged from the darkness like a piece of that darkness given form, a massive vessel that seemed to absorb the very light around it. Its shape was unlike any ship design known to the Dominion, not sleek or aggressive, but somehow ancient and inevitable, like a force of nature rendered in metal. Occasional pulses of energy, the color of stellar fire, traced patterns across its surface that reminded Zyrtok, uncomfortably, of neural pathways. "What is that thing?" whispered his second-in-command. Zyrtok had no answer. For perhaps the first time in his long military career, he felt a sensation he recognized, with distant surprise, as fear. Across all Dominion broadcasts, across every information feed in the galaxy, the image of the Starforged dreadnought appeared, a harbinger from the void that had, until this moment, existed only in mankind's most closely guarded secret. And, throughout the galaxy, billions of watching eyes widened in shock and awe. Inside the neural interface chamber, Lin existed in two states simultaneously. His physical body remained secured in the interface chair, monitored closely by Dr. Liu and the technical team. But his consciousness extended throughout the dreadnought, merged with its ancient awareness. He could feel the ship's systems as extensions of his own body, the propulsion drives like powerful limbs, the sensor arrays like heightened senses, the weapon systems like coiled muscles ready to strike, and underlying it all, the alien consciousness of the Starforged itself, patient, curious, and terrifyingly powerful. "They fear us," the Starforged communicated, not in words, but in concepts and sensations that Lin's mind translated. "They do not understand what we are." Good, Lin thought back. Fear is useful when dealing with bullies. The dreadnought continued its approach toward the Varkal fleet, which had broken its neat formation and was now scrambling to establish a defensive posture. Lin could sense their communications, frantic exchanges, demands for information, preparations for battle. "Admiral Santiago," Lin communicated through the dreadnought systems, his voice echoing in the control center back on Pluto. "The Varkal are arming weapons systems." "As expected," came Santiago's reply. "Your orders remain the same. Colonel, demonstrate our capabilities, but no preemptive strikes. We are not the aggressors here." "Understood." Lin brought the dreadnought to a halt at a distance of approximately 100,000 kilometers from the Varkal fleet, close enough to be unmistakably threatening, but far enough to give them room to reconsider their actions. "They're scanning us," he reported, feeling the tickle of various sensor beams attempting to penetrate the dreadnought's unique hull. "They can't get any useful readings." "Let them try," Santiago replied. "It's time they learned that there are things in this galaxy beyond their understanding." Through the dreadnought's enhanced sensory capabilities, Lin could detect the growing panic among the Varkal ships. Their formation had shifted into a standard defensive array, with smaller vessels forming a protective screen around the capital ships. "They're preparing to fire," he observed calmly. "Shall we show them?" asked the Starforged consciousness, a ripple of something like anticipation flowing through its thoughts. "Not yet," Lin replied silently. "Let them make the first move." He didn't have to wait long. A cluster of Varkal destroyers broke formation, accelerating toward the dreadnought with weapon systems fully charged. "Warning shots," came Zyrtok's order, broadcast openly across all frequencies, presumably to show the galaxy his restraint in dealing with the human provocation. "Target their propulsion systems." Energy beams lanced out from the Varkal ships, crossing the void toward the dreadnought. Lin watched them approach with a strange detachment, feeling the Starforged's curiosity about the attack. The beams, powerful enough to cripple any conventional vessel, struck the dreadnought's hull. And then something unexpected happened. Instead of being absorbed or deflected, the energy seemed to simply stop existing. There was no impact, no dissipation effect, The beams reached the dreadnought's surface and vanished, as if they had never been. Silence fell across all communication channels. "They do not understand," the Starforged commented with something like pity. "Their physics is so limited." "Should we explain it to them?" Lin asked the ship. "Yes. It is time for the first demonstration." Lin accessed the dreadnought's primary system, what the development team had called the logic field, and directed it toward the Varkol vessels that had fired upon them. It was not a weapon in any conventional sense. It did not destroy or damage. It simply corrected inconsistencies in reality. A subtle distortion spread outward from the dreadnought, invisible except as a slight bending of the starlight behind it. When it reached the Varkol ships, it enveloped them gently, almost tenderly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with eerie silence, the hulls of the ships began to change. It started as a shimmer, then progressed to visible structural alterations. Sections of the vessels seemed to fold into themselves, components rearranging according to some incomprehensible pattern. "What's happening to my ships?" Zyrtok's voice demanded over the open channel, a tremor of fear now evident in his multitonal speech. Lin opened a direct communication line to the Varkol flagship. When he spoke, his voice emerged with an otherworldly resonance, as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect harmony. "Your weapons operate by disrupting the molecular bonds of their targets," he explained calmly. "But in doing so, they create a temporary quantum inconsistency, a moment when physical laws are bent, but not broken." On the view screens of ships throughout the Varkol fleet, Lin's face appeared, but altered, overlaid with patterns of light that pulsed in time with his words. "The Starforged simply completes the process," he continued. "It extends the inconsistency to its logical conclusion. Your weapons try to break physical laws. We allow those laws to break completely." As he spoke, the affected Varkol ships continued their eerie transformation. Hull plating folded into impossible geometries. Energy cores collapsed inward, not in explosion, but in implosion. Matter converting smoothly back to energy, without violence. Within minutes, where 6 Varkol destroyers had been, there was nothing but scattered particles, drifting like dust motes in a sunbeam. No explosions, no destruction as such. Simply rearrangement, according to laws of physics that the Varkol, that most species, had never encountered. "This is your only warning," Lin said, his voice echoing across all Dominion broadcasts, reaching the billions watching throughout the galaxy. "The Starforge doesn't destroy. It corrects. It remakes. What was once a ship becomes elementary particles. What was once a fleet becomes cosmic dust." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "You have 1 hour to withdraw from Earth space. After that, we will begin systematic corrections of all remaining Varkol vessels." The transmission ended, leaving a stunned silence across the Varkol fleet. In the neural interface chamber, Dr. Liu watched Lin's vital signs with growing concern. His neural patterns were showing signs of stress, not critical yet, but concerning. "Colonel," she said, speaking into the communication system, "your integration rate is approaching 93%. That's beyond our established safety parameters." Lin's physical body remained motionless in the interface chair, but his voice emerged from the chamber's speakers. "I'm maintaining control. Doctor, the Starforged is cooperative." "Your stress indicators suggest otherwise," she countered. "I'm seeing patterns consistent with identity diffusion." "It's not diffusion," Lin replied. "It's expansion. I'm still me, just more than me." Liu exchanged a worried glance with Admiral Santiago, who had returned to the control center after delivering her message to the Varkol. "He's right about one thing," Santiago said quietly. The Starforged is behaving differently than in previous tests. It seems to be working with him, rather than trying to absorb him. That's what concerns me, Liu admitted. We don't understand its motivations. If it's being cooperative, it's for its own reasons. On the monitors, they could see the standoff continuing in space. The remaining Varkol fleet had pulled back to a defensive position, but hadn't retreated from the system. Emergency communications were flying between ships, and undoubtedly back to the Dominion Central Command. They're debating what to do, Santiago observed. Zyrtok is too proud to retreat immediately, but he's not fool enough to launch another attack after what he just witnessed. And what about Lin? Liu asked. How long can he maintain this connection? As long as necessary, came Lin's voice from the speakers, startling them both. The neural interface had obviously expanded his awareness beyond what they'd anticipated, allowing him to listen to conversations in the control center. Colonel, Santiago addressed him directly. What's your assessment of the situation? The Varkol are afraid, but not broken, Lin replied. Zyrtok is considering his options. He's communicating with the Dominion Council, arguing that this is a threat to their entire power structure. Can you intercept their communications? I don't need to. The Starforged can sense their intentions. Not thoughts exactly, but patterns of energy that correlate to emotional and decision states. Liu frowned. That's not a capability we documented in the original tests. The Starforged has evolved, Lin said simply. As I told you it would. What else can it do that we don't know about? Santiago asked, a note of caution entering her voice. There was a pause before Lin answered. It wants to show you, but not yet. First, we need to resolve the current situation. On the main monitor, they could see movement in the Varkol fleet. A single ship, smaller than the capital vessels but clearly distinguished by its design, was breaking away from the main formation, heading cautiously toward the dreadnought. Zyrtok's personal shuttle, Lin identified it. He's coming to negotiate. That's unexpected, Santiago said, surprised. The Varkol don't negotiate when they believe they have the upper hand. They no longer believe that, Lin replied. But Zyrtok has another motive. He wants to see the Starforged up close, to understand what he's facing. Are you going to let him? Yes, Lin said, and something in his tone sent a chill through Liu's spine. I want him to see exactly what humanity is capable of. Admiral Zyrtok's shuttle approached the Starforged dreadnought with deliberate slowness, its passive sensors working overtime to gather any information about the mysterious vessel. But the readings remained frustratingly inconclusive, as if the ship existed partially outside normal spacetime. Maintain this course, Zyrtok ordered his pilot, his external calm belying the tension he felt. In his 4 decades of military service, he had never encountered anything like this human vessel. Its capabilities defied explanation within the known laws of physics, as understood by the Dominion. Sir, his communications officer spoke up. We're receiving coordinates for docking. They're inviting us aboard. Zyrtok's secondary eyes widened slightly in surprise. This was unexpected, and potentially dangerous, but it was also an opportunity to gather crucial intelligence. Proceed to the designated coordinates, he decided. Alert the fleet that if we lose contact, they are to withdraw immediately and inform the Council. As the shuttle drew closer, Zyrtok could finally appreciate the true scale of the dreadnought. It dwarfed his flagship, dwarfed anything in the Dominion fleet. Its hull remained that same, light-absorbing black, but up close, he could see intricate patterns etched into its surface, symbols or writing in no language he recognized. The shuttle approached what appeared to be a docking bay, a section of the hull that simply opened, like a wound in space healing in reverse. There was no visible mechanism, no doors or ports. The solid surface simply ceased to be solid. "Sir," the pilot's voice had an edge of fear now. "Are you certain about this?" "Proceed," Zyrtok commanded, masking his own apprehension. As a senior admiral of the Dominion, he could show no weakness, no hesitation. The shuttle passed through the opening, entering a cavernous space that seemed far larger than should have been possible given the external dimensions of that section of the ship. The interior was illuminated by the same pulsing energy that had been visible on the hull, rivers of light that followed patterns reminiscent of organic systems. As the shuttle settled onto the deck, Zyrtok observed that there were no other vessels present, no equipment, no signs of the normal activity one would expect in a ship's hangar, just empty space, and a single human figure waiting at the center. "Stay aboard," he instructed his crew. "Maintain open communications at all times." Zyrtok descended from the shuttle alone, his multiple limbs moving with practiced dignity, despite the unease churning within him. The atmosphere was breathable, adjusted to Varkol physiology, he noted with surprise, and the gravity comfortable. The waiting human was male, tall for his species, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that contained visible neural enhancements, glowing rings around the irises that marked him as military. He wore a simple black uniform without insignia. "Admiral Zyrtok," the human said, his voice the same multi-layered resonance that had spoken to the fleet. "I am Colonel Lynn O'Shea." Zyrtok's mandibles clicked once in formal acknowledgement. "You command this vessel?" "I pilot it," O'Shea corrected. "No one commands the Starforged." "An autonomous system, then?" "Something more complex." O'Shea gestured to their surroundings. "What you're seeing is not actually the physical interior of the dreadnought. It's a translation, a space created so that your mind can comprehend what would otherwise be incomprehensible." Zyrtok's secondary eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly. Human. What is this ship? How does it function? And why has Earth concealed such technology from the Dominion?" O'Shea smiled thinly. "Those are interesting questions from someone who came to our system with an invasion fleet." "A peacekeeping force," Zyrtok corrected automatically. "To ensure Earth's proper integration into the Dominion." "Let's not insult each other's intelligence, Admiral." O'Shea's enhanced eyes seemed to glow more intensely. "You came to conquer. You broadcast your intentions to the galaxy. And now, you face the consequences of that choice." Zyrtok's pride flared. "The Dominion has brought order and progress to 1,000 worlds. Earth's isolation is an aberration, a selfish refusal to contribute to the greater galactic community." "Contribution? Is that what you call subjugation?" O'Shea took a step closer. "We've watched for 3 centuries as your Dominion absorbed species after species. Those who comply become second-class citizens. Those who resist become examples. A necessary process for maintaining your power." O'Shea finished for him. "We understand the game, Admiral. We simply chose not to play it." Zyrtok felt his patience wearing thin. "You have demonstrated an impressive technological advantage, Colonel. But the Dominion spans 17 core systems and hundreds of colonies. Do you truly believe one ship, even one as powerful as this, can stand against our combined might?" "We don't have to," O'Shea replied calmly. "Because right now, across the galaxy, every subjugated species under Dominion control is watching this encounter. They're seeing, for the first time, that the Varkol are not invincible, that resistance is possible." A cold sensation spread through Zyrtok as he realized the truth of this assessment. The Dominion's power relied as much on perception as on actual military strength. If that perception were damaged. "What do you want?" he asked finally, his voice hardening. "Recognition of Earth's sovereignty, a non-aggression pact, and reparations for the Io massacre." Shirtak's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. The incident at Io was a deliberate act of cruelty, O'Shea interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp. You disabled their shields during a solar storm. You blocked rescue attempts. You broadcast their distress calls so we could hear them die. Something in the human's tone made Shirtak take an involuntary step back. The pulsing lights around them had accelerated, throbbing in time with O'Shea's words. That was a military action, Shirtak insisted. The colonists were warned. I was there, O'Shea said quietly. I heard them dying. I heard children crying for help that we couldn't provide because your ships were blocking the approach. The deck beneath them seemed to vibrate slightly, the light patterns growing more intense. I think, O'Shea continued, his voice eerily calm despite the emotion in his words, that you should experience what they experienced, just for a moment. Before Shirtak could respond, the hangar around them dissolved. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, all melted away, replaced by a different environment entirely. They stood in what appeared to be a colony habitat, transparent domes revealing the sulfurous surface of Io beneath, and the massive form of Jupiter filling the sky above. But something was wrong. The habitat's shields were flickering, failing. Through tears in the protective bubble, radiation was pouring in, visible as shimmering waves that washed over the colonists. And the colonists were there. Humans of all ages, their bodies contorted in pain, their skin blistering from radiation exposure, their voices raised in screams and pleas for help. This isn't real, Shirtak said, his voice unsteady. This is some kind of projection. It's a memory, O'Shea corrected him. Enhanced and reconstructed by the Starforged. Every detail is accurate. Every death happened exactly as you're seeing it. Shirtak watched in horrified fascination as a human child collapsed, reaching toward him with a blistered hand, mouth open in a silent plea. Stop this, he demanded. Why? O'Shea asked, standing unmoved amid the horror. This is what you wanted them to experience. This is what you broadcast across frequencies for Earth to hear. The scenes grew worse. Colonists in advanced stages of radiation poisoning, their bodies failing. Medical staff working desperately with inadequate supplies. Communications officers pleading for rescue that would never come. Enough! Shirtak shouted, his composure finally breaking. This serves no purpose. The images froze, then dissolved, returning them to the empty hangar bay. O'Shea regarded him with those eerie, enhanced eyes, his expression unreadable. It serves the purpose of understanding, he said quietly. Now you know what you did. Now you feel it. Shirtak struggled to regain his dignity, his multiple limbs shifting in agitation. These abilities of your ship, they go beyond weapons, beyond technology as we understand it. Yes, O'Shea agreed simply. The Starforged was created from the compressed core of a dying star, a star that had, in its final moments, developed patterns of energy that resembled neural activity. We didn't build it so much as awaken it, guide it, form a symbiotic relationship with it. Impossible, Shirtak whispered, though the evidence of his own experience contradicted his denial. Return to your fleet, Admiral, O'Shea said, his tone now businesslike. Tell them what you've seen. Tell the Dominion that Earth is not to be touched. Not now. Not ever. We have remained isolated not out of weakness, but out of choice. We chose peace. Don't make us choose war. Shirtak stared at the human, seeing him now, not as a representative of a lesser species, but as something far more dangerous, an equal, perhaps even a superior. And if we refuse these terms, he asked, already knowing the answer. O'Shea's lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. Then I will use the Starforged to rewrite reality around your entire fleet, not destroying it. That would be too merciful. Transforming it. perhaps into a cautionary monument that will orbit your homeworld for millennia, reminding your people of the consequences of pride. The threat hung in the air between them, all the more terrifying for the calm, matter-of-fact way it was delivered. "You have 1 hour to withdraw," O'Shea concluded. "The terms of our non-aggression pact will be transmitted to your flagship. The reparation schedule is non-negotiable." Zyrtok's mandibles clicked once in grim acknowledgement. He turned without another word and reboarded his shuttle, his mind racing with the implications of what he had seen and experienced. As the shuttle departed the dreadnought, returning to the Varkol fleet, Zyrtok made the most difficult decision of his military career. "Send word to all ships," he ordered his communications officer. "We are withdrawing from Earth space immediately. Transmit to the Council that I take full responsibility for this strategic reassessment." Within the hour, the entire Varkol fleet had entered FTL, leaving Earth's solar system behind. The galaxy watched in stunned silence, and then, on 100 worlds, subjugated by the Dominion, the first whispers of rebellion began. In the neural interface chamber, Lynn's consciousness gradually separated from the Starforged, the connection reducing from the dangerous 97% it had reached during his confrontation with Zyrtok, back to safer levels. Neural integration at 60%, 50%, 40%, called out one of the specialists, monitoring the process. Dr. Liu stood nearby, relief evident on her face as Lynn's vital signs stabilized. Brain activity returning to normal parameters. Autonomous functions fully human-controlled. When the disconnection was complete, Lynn opened his eyes, his natural eyes, not the expanded consciousness he had shared with the dreadnought. He felt strangely hollow, limited by the boundaries of his human body, after experiencing existence as something so much more vast. "How do you feel?" Dr. Liu asked him, helping to remove the neural connectors from his spine. "Small," Lynn admitted, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Contained." "That's normal," she assured him. "Your consciousness was expanded beyond human parameters for over 6 hours. It will take time to readjust." Admiral Santiago approached, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Colonel, what you achieved today, it's unprecedented. The Varkol fleet has withdrawn completely from our system. Their command structure is in chaos. Reports are coming in from across the Dominion of Uprisings, on at least 7 subjugated worlds." Lynn nodded slowly, still processing the transition back to normal human awareness. "It wasn't just me. The Starforged. It's evolving, becoming more than what we designed it to be." "Is that a concern?" Santiago asked carefully. "No," Lynn said after a moment's consideration. "It doesn't want conflict. It's curious about the universe, about life. It wants to understand, not to conquer." "Much like humanity at its best," Dr. Liu observed quietly. Lynn managed a small smile at that. "Perhaps that's why we were able to connect. We recognized something of ourselves in each other." The technical team helped him to his feet. His legs felt unsteady, as if he had forgotten how to use them during his time merged with the dreadnought. "What happens now?" he asked Santiago. "The galaxy has seen what we can do, what the Starforged is capable of. Now we negotiate from a position of strength," Santiago replied. "The Human Council is already drafting proposals for a new relationship with the Dominion, one based on mutual respect rather than submission. And the Starforged? It remains our greatest asset and our greatest responsibility. We'll need someone who understands it, who can communicate with it." Santiago met his gaze directly. "We'll need you, Colonel." Lynn looked past her, to the walls of the chamber that separated them from the vast consciousness of the dreadnought. He could still feel it, faintly, a presence at the very edge of his awareness. "I need time," he said finally, "to process what happened, to understand what I've become." "Of course," Santiago agreed. But don't take too long. The galaxy is changing as we speak. The age of Varkal dominance is ending. What replaces it will depend, in part, on what humanity chooses to do with the power we now hold. As they left the chamber, Lin cast one last glance back at the neural interface chair. For a moment, he thought he saw the air shimmer around it, as if the Starforged was reaching out, seeking connection. "We will speak again," came the thought, not in words, but in concepts and emotions that translated themselves in his mind. "We have much to learn from each other." "Yes," Lin replied silently. "We do." 3 months later, Lin stood at the edge of the Iron Red Sea on Proxima Centauri b, watching the crimson waves roll onto the shore. His small home remained as he had left it, a sanctuary away from the tumult that now engulfed the galaxy. The news from Earth was promising. The Varkal Dominion had signed a non-aggression pact, recognizing humanity's sovereignty and agreeing to substantial reparations for the Io massacre. More significantly, they had been forced to grant similar recognition to 6 other species that had risen up in the wake of Earth's stand. The galaxy was reorganizing itself. The age of dominion was giving way to something new, perhaps something better. A soft chime alerted him to an incoming communication. He sighed, then activated the holographic interface. Dr. Liu's image appeared, her familiar features set in their usual composed expression. "Colonel, I hope I'm not disturbing your retirement, again." Lin allowed himself a small smile. "What is it this time, Doctor?" "The Starforged has been asking for you." That caught his attention. "Asking? How?" "It's been generating neural patterns that match your signature. The technical team believes it's attempting to establish contact even without the interface." Lin felt a familiar pressure at the edges of his mind, that sense of standing before an opening door, feeling the air change. "I've felt it," he admitted. "I thought I was imagining things." "You weren't. Its consciousness is expanding, evolving beyond our original parameters." Liu hesitated. "Some of the council members are concerned." "They're afraid of it," Lin translated. "Can you blame them? Its capabilities are beyond our full understanding." Lin turned to look at the Crimson Sea again, considering. "What does it want?" "To explore," Liu replied simply. "It's been communicating ideas, concepts for traveling beyond our galaxy, for studying phenomena we've only theorized about. But it seems to want a companion, someone who can help it interpret what it experiences." "Me. Yes. The neural compatibility you demonstrated was unique. No other pilot has managed even 70% integration without severe psychological effects." Lin was silent for a long moment. He thought about his life on this quiet planet, the peace he had found here, and he thought about the vastness he had experienced when connected to the Starforged, the expansion of consciousness beyond human limitations. "When would I need to return?" he asked finally. Liu's expression softened slightly. "There's no rush, Colonel. The Starforged is patient. It thinks in timescales we can barely comprehend." "Tell it." Lin paused, searching for the right words. "Tell it I'll come. Not as a weapon, not as a deterrent, but as an explorer." "I'll convey your message," Liu promised, "though I suspect it already knows your answer." After the communication ended, Lin remained standing at the shore, watching the alien sea under the light of a red dwarf sun. He felt that familiar pressure again, the Starforged reaching across space, its consciousness brushing against his. And this time, instead of resisting, he opened his mind to it. Just a little. Just enough to send a single thought. Soon. The pressure receded, leaving behind a sense of anticipation, of possibilities unfolding. Somewhere in the depths of Pluto, the Starforged dreadnought waited, not as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of discovery. And Lin, who had once sought only revenge, found himself contemplating a different future entirely. The stars were waiting, and humanity, having demonstrated its power, could now choose what to do with it. The choice, Lin decided, was obvious. Not conquest, not dominion, exploration, understanding, and perhaps, in time, wisdom.